Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, Felony Friday is the show where each and every single week I focus on exposing injustice in this country's broken criminal justice system. This is one of three shows we have here on Lions of Liberty. The other two shows, the first one kicks off every week on Monday. It's hosted by Mark Clare. It's our flagship program, our longest running program where Mark interviews leaders in the libertarian movement, and he hosts roundtable discussions. Every Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land, hosted by Brian McWilliams. It is your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty. Very entertaining show. And to get all three of these shows delivered to your listening device, to your feed, to your earbuds, just be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. Just scream at your Alexa, which is probably recording everything that you're saying because the CIA has all the records to your Alexa. They probably do. They probably do. So be careful with your Alexa, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, you can still use it to listen to the Lions of Liberty podcast. All right, so today's episode, very important episode. It's a milestone episode. This is the 150th episode of Felony Friday. So that means the show notes you can find at lionsofliberty.com/FF150. And this is cool, man. I mean, I never thought when I started out with Felony Friday that I would have 150 episodes. I didn't think I would have 10 episodes. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So it's incredible to think back, I was thinking back earlier this week about all the people I've interviewed, all these stories that have been told over these past 150 episodes, and it's just remarkable. I'm truly honored to be a part of it, and I don't know. I'm just going to keep pushing, keep going, and keep bringing people on to share their story. Today's episode is another great story. I'm excited for you guys to get to know Kevin Matthews. Kevin he's in out in Colorado, in Denver. And we're going to be talking about legalizing psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms. How is that happening? Well, what are they doing out in Denver to make this happen? What's the chance of it happening? It's a really, really important episode, really, really important topic with a wide-reaching benefits, throughout the country and throughout the world. So this is big-time stuff, guys. So be sure to, if you do want to share this episode, of course, you can share it many different ways on our webpage, or the video version of this you'll be able to see Kevin and I talking back and forth. That'll be on YouTube, and you can find that quickly by going to the show notes page at lionsofliberty.com/FF150. Also, you can just go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lions of Liberty. Be sure to click that bell in the top of the frame there to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's it, guys. Let's get rolling with today's show. My guest today on Felony Friday is Kevin Matthews. Kevin is the campaign director of Decriminalize Denver. And Kevin is collecting signatures right now with the intent of getting decriminalization of psilocybin mushrooms on the ballot in Denver in 2019. Kevin, welcome to Felony Friday.
Hey, John, thank you so much for having me on your show and the opportunity to share our work with your audience. This is great.
Well, yeah, thanks for coming on the show. And, I heard about Decriminalize Denver pretty recently, I think maybe 2-3 weeks ago. Had a libertarian friend reach out to me and say, hey, you got to check out what this guy's doing out in Denver, Kevin Matthews. And, I hadn't heard of, I don't think any other cities or communities or states or anything like that are really approaching decriminalizing psilocybin in this manner. So just kind of wanted to start out down that path, talk about the petition itself, what the goals are, where that came from, and then maybe later in the podcast we'll get into your own personal motivations and your personal journey and some of that stuff. So let's just start out with that. So how did Decriminalize Denver come about? What was the catalyst? What got you started?
Well, like all great things, it started out as an idea. My involvement with the campaign goes back to kind of late December 2017. I had actually just heard about the initiative that was at the time in California and was very curious about that, and just happened to meet the right people at the right time. And we went through a couple different iterations of the language with the city and county of Denver and Denver elections. And basically, I kind of ended up being picked as to be the guy to run the campaign, and was able to build a pretty amazing team of individuals here in Denver to both advise on policy and legal matters. And here we are today. It's been quite a wild 9 months. I'll say that for sure.
So what are the current laws in Colorado and within, obviously within the county and within the city of Denver around psilocybin mushrooms? What if you get caught with them? If you get caught growing them, all the above, what's the scenario? What kind of trouble are you in?
Sure. So throughout the entire state, it's actually under state statute that psilocybin is criminalized as a Schedule I substance, just like the federal laws around psilocybin. So really any amount that you're caught with is considered a potential felony. And of course it varies depending on how they determine intent, or if you're looking at distribution to sell or things like that. But for the most part, it's a Schedule I felony to be in possession or to even use psilocybin in Colorado. And in Denver defers to the state authority there. And so with our initiative, we've managed to really craft a language that in many ways makes Denver a sanctuary city to use psilocybin mushrooms.
How does the language, how do you guys do that within the language for the bill?
Yeah, so first of all, very similar to some of this original cannabis legislation back in the mid-2000s, Denver was the first city in the country to essentially decriminalize cannabis for adult use. And so we use that as a model to craft our language. And so first of all, psilocybin, under what we've written, will be considered a lowest arrest priority, which is pretty commonplace among a lot of these decriminalization initiatives, whether it's for cannabis or other substances. Mm-hmm. And then we went a step further, and another section in our language is defunding the city, so preventing the city from using any of its resources to actually prosecute any individuals who are arrested for psilocybin in the city. And so there's some precedent there with a cannabis initiative at the federal level, which was for hemp, that we went ahead and put that in there. And then what's unique about our language is that Denver is considered a sanctuary city when it comes to immigration, and that's under Chapter 28 in the Denver ordinance. And we placed our initiative right beneath the section where essentially it states that city officials don't have to cooperate with law enforcement when it comes to immigration. And so right beneath that section in the Denver Code is our initiative to decriminalize psilocybin. And that's considered the human rights chapter in Denver. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
So this would then be something that other cities could then take and implement themselves, right? Sort of take it state to state, city to city.
It could be something absolutely that's used as a model moving forward in other municipalities. I think Denver's well positioned because we have a very strong history of drug policy reform, and using Denver as really the first city to decriminalize psilocybin, you can absolutely take the model that we've used that we'll be successful with and apply it to other jurisdictions as well. And that's hopefully the goal down the road here is when we do succeed in May to be able to take the momentum that we've gained and start this work in other cities as well.
So this will then be a ballot initiative in May, or what's the process here? Yeah. How many signatures did you have to get? All that stuff.
So it will be a ballot initiative, and Colorado is one of I think there's 23 states in the union that allow for citizen-initiated ordinances to change the law. So in Denver, the whole process is you craft up some language, and then you turn it into the Denver City Council. And then the Denver City Council basically has some time to come up with their own questions to ask for clarification and for our intent. And So we did that. And then once we went through city council, then the language gets pushed on to the Denver elections division.
Mm-hmm.
And the Denver elections job is to make sure that essentially the language isn't confusing to voters, and that it kind of lines up in terms of the legalese, for lack of a better term, and that it makes sense where we've decided to put it in the Denver code. So that process, we did that 3 times with our campaign. Our first submission was in March, and our second submission was in May. Both times we made it through city council, and then were rejected by Denver elections. And that's when we decided that we need to get a little bit more help with this and bring in some legal advisors and really craft something that would be not only acceptable to Denver elections, but also palatable to the people of Denver. And so we were approved by Denver elections to start collecting signatures on, it was October 10th of this year. And we had our volunteer training a week later, and we've been collecting signatures pretty much ever since. And we do need, it's approximately 5,000 signatures from registered city and county of Denver voters to qualify for the ballot.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem too bad. I mean, that's a reasonable number, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, it is reasonable, and we've been going at this for 3 weeks with a pretty small handful of volunteers. Really only about 7 or 8 of us who've been really dedicated to this. And so far, yesterday we just hit our 2,500 signature mark.
Oh, nice.
And the goal here is to get about 10,000, so that if any of those signatures that we do gather happen to be invalid, then we have a little bit of breathing room there. So we now have a volunteer force of over 25 people, and essentially our whole outreach campaign is mapped out to make our voter contact and get those signatures in the next 8 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what sort of response have you gotten? You going out talking to people, going to different events in the community? Have you gotten anyone, spitting in your face and saying to get out of here with it, or has it been pretty positive?
It's been overwhelmingly positive, John. We've had very few people react in that manner where it seems like they're offended by the fact that we're actually out there doing that. I can really count with one hand how many of those we've had. But overall, it's been extremely positive. Most people say, yes, of course I'll sign that. Because we do emphasize that our main role here is to keep individuals out of prison, and to also make psilocybin more accessible or more safe for people to use, especially our veterans, people who are suffering from PTSD and anxiety. So people seem to be very receptive. We did have some scientific polling done for our campaign back this summer, and this is actually, it's a 45% support rate, and then with a 20% margin of people who are a maybe. And so we're looking at potentially 65% of Denver voters who might say yes to this. And the really exciting and a little bit surprising aspect of that specific poll was that these were phone calls to individuals who still had landlines in their homes. And not many people have landlines anymore.
I don't think I knew anybody with a landline.
Right. So, that just, it bodes well. And it's really on us to make sure that this is really an educational campaign. A lot of the no's that we've had, and even some of the fence sitters, is simply just a matter of individuals not being educated about the potential of psilocybin to really have an effective treatment option for so many things that are plaguing our culture right now.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about those treatment options. But first, I just want to say, I think it's really smart what you guys have done by really sort of meeting people where they are and bringing it to them, as a way, to, first of all, to help. It's a public safety issue, so you're trying to make sure that people are able to get help if they need it, veterans and whatnot. You don't want people to end up in jail for selling mushrooms or stuff that you can grow. Just ridiculous to lock someone in a cage for something like that. But at the same time, you're not approaching them in the way that I've seen libertarians do this, where people who really haven't even thought about it this way before, but you approach them as, well, it's not the government's right to tell people how to live their life or what to put in their body. I mean, you don't want to just cold approach someone and shove a paper in their face and say, sign here. It's not the government's right to tell people how to live their life. People, that scares a lot of people off, I'm sure. So I'm kind of curious, what kind of led you guys down that path to, was there any, have you guys had internal training on how to approach people, or what's the best way to really get this to succeed, or what, is there any story behind that?
Yeah, well, some of our campaign advisors have experience in this whole ballot initiative process, but really, psilocybin and psychedelics in general are obviously such a sensitive issue to people. I think because there's been 50 years of basically government propaganda around their use and around their effects, and so individuals have this almost programmed sense in their mind that these are dangerous, and that they shouldn't be used or tinkered with, and so thankfully, in many ways, a lot of our messaging has relied a lot on, again, this clinical research. Like, that's very important to our campaign. But mostly, additionally with our campaign, looking at, what are people going to resonate with? And so public health and safety is a big aspect of that. Mm-hmm. And really, honestly, it's been just an experiment to see what works and see how people respond. It took us about 3 weeks with our boots on the ground to figure out how to approach people. And the idea here is to keep it very, very, very simple. Mm-hmm. And it's not our job to debate anybody right now. It's simply our job to get a signature. Once we make the ballot and we start campaigning, and then of course we'll be having these deeper discussions about all these public health and safety risks and the clinical aspects of it. But really, it's just like, hey, are you a city and county of Denver registered voter? Will you sign a ballot petition to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms? Sometimes we say magic mushrooms, just depending on the environment. If we're at a venue and it's like an electronic music or jam band scene, then we'll lead with magic mushrooms. But people in Denver are, given the whole cannabis scene, they seem pretty aware of a lot of these drug policy issues, and it's very much on our campaign to make sure that our messaging reaches people. And so, veterans are a big thing. People definitely resonate with that. And we are working with a veterans group called Veterans for Natural Rights, headed up by Matt Kale. And then also we have drug policy advocates and drug policy reform professionals. And so it's fun because in many ways our campaign, it's broad reaching across both sides of the aisle. And these are issues that a lot of people can stand behind. Veterans on one side and drug policy reform, keeping people out of prison on the other side. And it seems to be working for us, where we can kind of meet in the middle and share about it.
So you talked a little bit about the clinical research that's being done. And I think the first I heard about research being done into magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, I listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast. Have you ever listened to Tim Ferriss? You're familiar with him?
I do. Mm-hmm.
I think that he somehow was involved in, you can correct me here, you probably know more about this than I do, involved in initiating some of this funding. Is that correct? And he was raising funds for, I'm not sure if it was MAPS. MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. Mm-hmm. I think he was raising funds for Johns Hopkins University. I want to say back in 2014, and I think he's still raising funds for them. And it's cool you bring that up, because that was part of my initial interest in this a couple of years ago when I started researching this for myself. But yeah, he's been a very outspoken individual in terms of furthering the clinical research, and it's something that these research organizations have to rely on the donations from individuals. They don't get government grants or government funding to continue their work, and so in that sense, it's been really incredible just to see a lot of these
some of these more high profile individuals coming out and not only sharing this work, but devoting a lot of their time to raise money for it. It's pretty incredible to see it happen.
It's really fascinating because it's such an interesting time we live in today where, someone like a Tim Ferriss, or, I mean, there's a bunch of other podcasts out there that are, like that. They're more, the hosts are into, I guess, biohacking, things like that. And they get this big following and they bring all these people together, but it's so powerful. I mean, there's millions of people that can get behind this. So you can really move policy just with a podcast, which is crazy to think about. When you go back even 10 years, that would be unheard of, that,
Right.
something like that could happen. So it's so cool. And, it makes me really hopeful for the future when I see things like that. And just to dig a little bit into the clinical research that's going on, can you just give like a high level overview of some of the things that are being researched right now and sort of what's the path forward?
Absolutely. So right now there's an organization called Compass Pathways, and Compass Pathways makes good manufacturing practice, GMP certified, psilocybin for research purposes. And they just recently received a designation from the FDA called breakthrough therapy status. And what that means is that it essentially pushes research for psilocybin to the front of the line in terms of the FDA and the government, kind of to bypass a lot of that red tape. And the FDA doesn't actually hand out breakthrough therapy status that often. To my understanding, in fact, the last time they did that was, I want to say, back in 2016 for MDMA. And so the research with Compass Pathways right now is looking at treatment-resistant depression, and psilocybin as an effective treatment option for that. And so those are phase 2 trials right now that are continuing with that. And then there, over the last decade, there have been a number of clinical trials, mostly conducted through Johns Hopkins University, also NYU, and I want to say Harvard, UCLA, some of these big research universities in the US. And some of those studies are, well, a very big one that was conducted by Johns Hopkins was looking at psilocybin as a treatment for end-of-life distress and anxiety. And so individuals with terminal illness or cancer patients who have a lot of anxiety about the fact that they're going to die, right? And it's the results from those studies were, I mean, nothing short of miraculous. There's an incredible documentary called it's called Psilocybin: A New Understanding, for any of your audience who wants to research that and get a more in-depth look at that specific research for end-of-life patients. But that was really the biggest one in many ways that brought psilocybin much more into the mainstream. It's also been seen as an effective treatment for treating alcoholism and for treating tobacco addiction, and also as treating cluster headaches, which is something I didn't really knew was a big thing for a lot of people in our country, but apparently a lot of people suffer from cluster headaches.
Is that like a migraine or what? I've never heard that term before. Cluster.
It's like, from what I understand, it's a rapid onset, kind of like a migraine, a rapid onset headache. Okay. It's extremely painful. That could be brought about by anxiety or distress or other things like that. But psilocybin is an option for that, which also goes to show that it could be used potentially as a treatment option for pain in general. And so that's really exciting. All that stuff is extremely exciting and very relevant to our campaign. We're working, actually, we have a friend of mine, a friend of ours, who is one of a handful of people in Colorado who's actually currently prescribed psilocybin under the Federal Right to Try Act that Trump just signed into law last summer. And he has tumors all up and down his spine and in his brain. Wow. And he has multi-symptom PTSD. So PTSD is as a result of many different traumas that have occurred in his life. And he's been working with the same psychiatrist for over 2 decades, the same medical team for over a decade. And his psychiatrist went out on a limb and decided to see if psilocybin might be a good option for him because nothing else was working really. And he's been taking psilocybin since March of this year. He takes 1.5 to 2 grams every 7 to 10 days, and also has the option to do a little booster dose for him if he feels like he needs it.
Is that spread out over the days, or is it?
No, he'll just do a 1.5 to 2 gram dose one time. So basically once a week, he'll do that. And then potentially like a little booster dose if he feels like he needs it. But his entire medical team is completely blown away to the point that they're starting to document his progress now. Wow. Because the change in his behavior, his outlook, his whole perspective on life shifted nearly overnight. And, it's still a little bit of a gray territory because he has to source it himself. And, there's a whole bunch of other risks there because it's still a Schedule I substance, but he's another example of an individual who is not only prescribed psilocybin by a psychiatrist, and not like a pill form. He eats the raw fungal material.
He has to source it himself?
He has to source it himself. Yeah, he has to source it himself. Whether he purchases it from somebody or grows it himself, he has to source it himself. The really cool thing about that is that he gets to be in charge of his own protocol, though. Mm-hmm. In many ways, his doctors are a little bit hands-off and just observing, and just really keeping track of his behavior and his mental health. But it's been incredible for him. Yeah. So there's, it's wild, right?
Yeah, it's really wild.
Wow. Excuse me. So with our campaign, we hope to, at the very least, set a framework where we can not only continue more of this research, because more research needs to be done. Mm-hmm. In addition to all of the amazing clinical work that's been done, there's still a lot more research to do because we still don't fully understand psilocybin. We know that it's physiologically safe. We know that it's not addictive. It won't harm your body. And we have all these amazing clinical benefits, but there's still just more work to be done, more research to be done. And in cases where, like my friend, he needs safe access without needing to look over his shoulder to, out of fear of criminal penalty or something like that.
Yeah, so, or getting associated with a shady character by having to make a black market deal to procure that.
Exactly.
So absolutely. Yeah. So let's we have a little more time left. I want to hear a little bit about your own backstory.
Sure.
You don't just wake up. Well, maybe some people do wake up one day and decide they just want to dedicate all this time to decriminalizing psilocybin. But so what's your story? What's your backstory with magic mushrooms?
Yeah. I was a cadet at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point for 3 years. Entered as a plebe in 2005 and left in 2008 due to major depression. So I'm actually retired with an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army for major depression. And I spent my entire life wanting to attend West Point and be a career military officer. And it's really the only thing that I knew for well over a decade, from when I was about 9 years old until I got in when I was 20. And it, for depending on how you might look at it, it might sound classic or cliche, but my world fell apart after I left the academy. And so I was left with this idea of, who am I? What am I doing with my life? And this has been, it's been a decade of growth. Mushrooms have been extremely impactful for me. And I'll even go as far to say that they've saved my life. I'm not your typical psychonaut. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go, party every single weekend and go to dance shows and eat a bunch of mushrooms and trip all the time. But it's something that, of the experiences I've had in my life, they've been able to give me a new perspective and a new outlook on life, and really in terms of depression, create a new framework for just approaching the world and understanding that I have a lot more power and control over my own life than depression led me to believe that I was a victim to my circumstances and my environment. And psilocybin actually helped me break out of that paradigm for myself and start creating something new. So when I left the academy, it was a number of years that I was floating around, and then got a little bit involved with, say, kind of transformational community out here in Colorado and in Denver. And there's a very strong undercurrent subculture of psychedelic use in Colorado. I would argue the entire country, actually. But I just, it was something that I was very careful about, but also very interested in. And it's something that the experience has been so profound and so powerful that I always carry it with me. And so when the opportunity came to even just be a part of the conversation to decriminalize mushrooms in Denver, I was all over it, because I've heard, I have a lot of friends who benefited from it. And now that I've been working with the campaign, I get stopped constantly when I'm collecting signatures, and people are just like, man, mushrooms have saved my life. It's saved my marriage. It's, I'm a better person today because of mushrooms. And sometimes these are people that you would not expect to hear that from. And so it's been quite an adventure. And in many ways, I feel like, I have the opportunity now to apply, to kind of bridge two worlds. I get to use the skills and the training and the kind of expertise that I got from my time at the academy, very military, more kind of conservative focused, and now working, and then being a part of this kind of transformational culture. So being able to bridge those two worlds and create something that could have a really genuine and lasting impact in Denver is a great start.
Yeah, in Denver, and then maybe eventually across the United States. So, I'm really glad I got the chance to have you on and to talk about this, because, two passions that I have, one being, criminal justice reform, reforming these terrible laws that we have in this country that lock people in cages for nonviolent crimes. But also another passion of mine is, natural supplements, natural medicine, finding ways to heal yourself without using chemicals and things like that are, not made, that don't come from nature, that come from being manipulated by human hands. So to be able to merge those two things and to talk to you today, this was a really cool episode. And I'm really glad that our mutual friend connected us, and really looking forward to seeing where this goes, man.
Thank you, John. Yeah, this has been great, and let's do it again when we're on the ballot.
All right, Kevin, just one more question for you, one more ask. Could you please let my audience know where they can learn everything about Decriminalize Denver, Facebook page, website, how they can volunteer, how they can donate, all that good stuff?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, John. So our website is decriminalizedenver.org, and we're on Instagram and Facebook at Decriminalize Denver. And every Friday, for your audience who's in Denver, every Friday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., we'll be at the Collective, which is downtown on 20th and Lawrence. And then, on the website, you'll find all the opportunities where you can get involved, where you can donate to the campaign. And definitely follow us on social media, because that's really our main outlet right now, where we spread information and get the word out. So thank you very much.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much for coming on. All right, guys, that is a wrap for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kevin Matthews. Really, I don't think you can really overstate how important this work is that he's doing with Decriminalize Denver and his team there, all the volunteers that are out there, getting signatures to get on the ballot, to get psilocybin decriminalized in Denver. Really, hopefully, can be used then as a template to be used across the country. Just such a powerful, natural way to heal, way to medicate, way to for people to find some peace and really really finding a different way to heal what ails them. So or just have fun. You know, people like to take magic mushrooms to have fun too. So that's out there as well. Guys, you know, I just want to thank everybody. This is the 150th episode again. I talked about it at the top a little bit, but I would not have done 150 episodes. I wouldn't have done 50 episodes. I would not have done 5 episodes if I did not get so much support, so many emails, so many people messaging me on Facebook. It's just giving me so much love and appreciation for doing this podcast, for doing these interviews, for talking to people, for sharing these stories. It really, really means a lot to me. The amount of people that have reached out to me over these past 3 years, it's incredible. It's humbling. And the only promise I can make to you is I will keep doing it as long as I keep hearing from you. And I mean, the best way, my favorite way to hear from you guys, I think Mark and Brian agree. You know, they are working their asses off too with their shows. But I mean, the favorite thing, the best thing we like to see to somebody to show appreciation for all the hard work they were putting in is to join our Patreon group. Go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty and just subscribe for as little as $5 a month. Or if you're feeling good about it, you have a little extra money laying around, 10 or 15 or even 25. It means so much to us, and all of that money is going right back into this show to help us expand the show, advertise, get more people listening to it, get better equipment. It's all so important. So we thank all of our current subscribers. We've had a lot of you guys with us for a very long time, and it means so much. It means so much, guys. This is support that we've had from you, and we literally could not do this without you. So thank you from the bottom of our heart. The reason we do this is to advance the ideas of liberty. The reason we do this is to expand individual liberty for not just us, but for future generations. So this is a team effort. This is why we have our Lions of Liberty Forum to build that community, which you can join on Facebook by typing Lions of Liberty Forum in the search bar at the top. And I know we should probably look for a different forum than Facebook because we could be kicked off any minute, but that's a discussion for another day. So yeah, just become a part of our community. Join in. We're having a lot of fun, guys. And thank you so much for listening. This is John Odermatt signing off for the 150th time. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.